Who killed Eliza Vasquez? As a Mexican-American family moves from Boyle Heights, Los Angeles, into the sleepy suburban town of Harper, they are met with suspicion. Who is the so-called Harper murderer? Is it Michael Martinez, a construction supervisor with a quick temper and an anti-immigrant bias, Robert Parsons, a known racist with a number of secrets kept from his family and community, or Kenton Weaver, a disgraced former teacher who is haunted by the ghost of one of his students? Grievances, both new and old, emerge as members of the Martinez family, the Parsons family, and Weaver become tangled in a disastrous chain of events before a shocking conclusion. And I'm going to go ahead and start with some selections from the book. This first selection is from Chapter 1, Neighbors. Bright red soy chorizo sizzled in a pan with vegan eggs made of mung beans, coconut milk, and black salt. A black spatula mixed them together, preparing a vegan chorizo con huevos. Holding the spatula and stirring the breakfast dish was Xochitl Martinez, a Mexican-American woman in her early 30s. That morning, she was dressed in workout clothes, ready to go jogging after she finished preparing the meal and seeing her son off for his first day at his new school. Xochitl ignited another burner as she dug into an open bag of vegan tortillas and placed one to cook directly on the stove. She fiddled with the burner's control as she continued stirring the chorizo con huevos with her other hand. Overhead lights illuminated the kitchen and family room surrounding her. Boxes labeled for the kitchen and family room sat both opened and unopened. They rested on counters and in stacks on the floor with cooking utensils, silverware, pots and pans, and dishes and cups and mugs strewn about everywhere. An old refrigerator that came with the house hummed next to the burner. In the family room, a couch was placed with a simple black coffee table and a simple black stand with a 48-inch flat screen. White vertical blinds covering the sliding glass door to the backyard were closed tight. The kitchen had a bar with two chairs partially separating it from the family room. At an outlet in the kitchen near the kitchen window sat a coffee pot, steam rising from its brew. "Lalo, Desano," Xochitl yelled out, calling her son Edward to breakfast. As Xochitl cooked, the hand of her older brother, Michael, swept in and snagged some of the freshly cooked food from the pan. Michael shoved the little orange nuggets of vegan chorizo into his mouth, cooling it off in his cheeks as he chewed, much to the annoyance of his sister. Michael carried the morning newspaper in his other hand. Xochitl turned around and punched him in the arm. "Quítate, haz caso," Xochitl yelled at her brother. "Don't grab it with your fingers, Miguel. Did you even wash your hands?" Xochitl asked. "Not bad, sis." Michael ignored his sister's question as he licked his fingers and wiped them on his pants. "Does it have to be vegan, though?" Michael grabbed a mug and rinsed it in the sink. "Even the tortillas?" Michael poured himself a cup of coffee and started drinking. He moved around the counter and sat on one of the bar stools, resting the newspaper on the counter next to him. Xochitl continued cooking, her back turned to him. "Remember, I'm a flexitarian." Michael rolled his eyes. He and his sister were different in so many ways. Part-time vegan and into yoga and Aztec traditions, she was a Chicana hipster. Back in Boyle Heights, Xochitl was plugged into the small network of galleries, bookstores, yoga studios, outdoor markets, and more on First Street, the ones that sold organic products and promoted leftist ideas. "She's too much like our father," Michael thought. Ricardo Martinez had recounted to Michael multiple times how he'd been inspired by the Chicano movement of decades past. Having had a handful of coaches, teachers, and older friends who had lived through and participated in the events and activities that had defined that era, having missed out on the walkouts and the moratorium by being born a few years too late, Ricardo had shown his commitment to La Casa by donating large amounts of his income to local churches, public schools, libraries, and activist-focused community centers. Michael's father had always been ready to donate to a food drive or supply poster boards for marches. But with his income as a fence builder, his father's constant philanthropy sometimes had the side effect of leaving his own family wanting. For as long as Michael could remember, the Martinezes had rented in Boyle Heights instead of owning their own home. Michael had remarked occasionally while growing up, mostly to his mother, that the people his father had helped were eating and living better than he and Xochi. Michael hated his father. He hated his donations, hated how he had brought he and Xochi to protests and marches as children, then left them in the sun-drenched care of merchants and activists while he had gone out to hand out pamphlets. Michael resented the landlords the Martinezes had welcomed into their house and cowed to. Michael resented the apologies on birthdays and Christmas mornings and promises of gifts that never came. Michael resented his father's lack of ambition and his unwillingness to learn new trades and want for a better life. One of the reasons Michael had been so intent on moving Xochi out of the old neighborhood was to get her out of some of those same situations. He didn't want his nephew to grow up like he had, wanting in the face of misguided philanthropy. Michael hoped Xochi would be able to adjust to life here. She loved the house. She had told him as much. She knew she would grow to love the town and its people too, in time. So that chapter introduces the family dynamic with the Martinez family, these two siblings, coming from different perspectives. And this next excerpt that I'm going to read is from chapter 14, the art contest. And this paints a little bit more of a picture of Xochi Martinez and her philosophy. The soles of black running shoes pounded the pavement. Cracks in the concrete allowed for single blades of grass to peek through the gaps. Cracked walnut shells, pine needles, and bougainvillea flowers lay scattered on the sidewalks in front of houses. Xochi Martinez ran down the sidewalk on Harper Boulevard, her black wireless headphones in her ears as drops of sweat glistened on her forehead. Xochi ran through the neighborhood with a flurry of thoughts raging in her brain. She knew she was running through a neighborhood in mourning that was simultaneously held captive by fear. Xochi could feel the suspicious looks of fellow runners and walkers, as well as those who stared at her from the insides of cars and the windows of houses. Their eyes seemed to ask, "Who are you? Why are you here? Why haven't I seen you before?" Xochi was afraid of them, too. Each footstep behind Xochi, every car driving up alongside her, every bicycle passing her by, every dog barking, rushing towards a fence and colliding with it, was the threat of murder. Every car alarm, every revving of a motor, every fly buzzing in her ear, everything that could disorient and startle even for a moment, was the killer's attack. But the quiet and stillness found in passing undeveloped areas or empty streets brought Xochi no relief either. Every blind corner, every patch of darkened bushes or trees, every closed door and every locked gate concealed unseen terrors within, waiting and inevitable. More people, beyond just Edward and Michael, were starting to suspect the door-to-door canvasser, Nathan Fields, who had been missing now for more than 3 days, was dead as well, his corpse hidden and rotting somewhere, another victim of the so-called Harper murderer. The residents of Harper eagerly awaited a local news broadcast announcing the killer had been captured or had somehow left a clue that he, she, or they had moved on to kill somewhere else. Most of all, residents waited for answers. They waited and prayed for the forensics teams and detectives from Los Angeles to finally arrive and begin their investigation into the murder of Eliza Vasquez. Xochi had grown up in Los Angeles. She had lived in some dangerous areas, had come across some dangerous people and situations. She had seen people threaten others with guns, been in a couple of fights, witnessed the aftermath of a few car crashes and muggings, but this all felt different. Xochi knew all those streets, their dim and bright streetlights alike, their houses, their apartments, their parks, their parking lots, even the ones she had walked by and through alone late at night. She knew what areas to avoid and when. A lot of people in her community had known her and had looked out for her. I'm scared of everyone here, Xochi thought, and they're scared of me. Does the murderer live here? Was it just someone passing through? Could it be someone who just moved in? Someone who only comes in for work? These were the questions Sochi had heard people in Harper ask each other, especially among parishioners at St. Martin's yesterday. Sochi found it disgusting that many of these same people, some of which had claimed Eliza Vasquez as one of their own, a tragic loss to their community, would easily deny Eliza's family that same adoration and respect, seeing them as outsiders. They teared up, though, when looking at Eliza's picture, all except the worst. Sochi thought of the hypocrites with their tissues and anti-immigrant sentiments. They cried for Eliza because she was young and pretty, too young and precious to hate. Eliza got the citizenship in death she didn't get in life, Sochi thought. Sochi wondered where the Vasquezes had gone. She wondered how they would be able to cope with something as terrible as losing their child. Sochi wondered if any of them had been detained or questioned by the police when they had arrived at the scene. She thought about how awful and scary it must have been for them. Sochi worried ICE had been called in and they had already been detained or deported. Sochi feared what had happened to the Vasquezes. She was angry she didn't have any easy way of finding out.